What's the closest you've come to dying in your life? I was climbing up a brick enclosed grill as a child by myself. We used to play on it all the time. I got to the top and a brick came loose. I ended up falling down and landing headfirst on the brick. It split my head wide open and I would have bled to death if someone hadn't been walking down the sidewalk that knew my family. They picked me up and carried me down the road to my family, who then rushed me to the hospital. What? How high was that grill? The grill itself wasn't very high. It was encased in brick and had a chimney for the smoke. That's the part we would climb. I was pretty young when it happened and it was torn down before I returned to that area as an adult, so I can't give a for sure height on it. 5, 6 feet maybe. Crashed my motorcycle and bounced into the oncoming lane. Luckily the oncoming dump truck had really good brakes. No kidding. Where I stopped and where he stopped, the front left tire was less than 2 feet from running right over the middle of me. That would have been an unpleasant way to go. How did your crash occur? I was going around a curve, and on the other end the highway department had cut a strip across the road to access a pipe underneath, and so it was just a strip all the way across the road of loose sand. Hit it. Lost traction. Bike slid right out from under me. Brain aneurysm ruptured. I was on a ventilator for a week in a medically induced coma following the neurosurgery. That's the thing I'm scared of the most, because it can happen to anyone unexpectedly. Got robbed when I was getting off a bus for my backpack and my skateboard. Got sucker punched and stabbed in the head while they were cutting off my backpack. Didn't even take my wallet. Same. Got robbed attempted at gunpoint outside a Piggly Wiggly when I was like 16. I was with my brother-in-law at the time leaving the store. Brother-in-law starts laughing at him for some reason which makes me laugh, and the guy just runs off. That was a weird ducking day. I still don't know why the duck I started laughing like that. Still recovering from it. Car accident happened in August. Business trip to Dallas, Texas. From what the police report said, the co-worker driving me ran a red light. We were hit by a Sprinter van at 50 mph and were slammed into a guardrail. Broke 7 ribs, collarbone, punctured lung, and fractured 2 vertebrae in my neck. Luckily I'm going to make a full recovery, but I have another month in a neck brace. Everyone else involved had minor injuries. Dealing with workers' comp has been a nightmare. Crazy, but I bet you're happy to be getting that neck brace off soon. Back when I lived in Mexico, when I was 15 or so, there was a time when it rained pretty badly. I was alone in the house, as my brother and mother were in the United States to buy a few things. The rain was so bad that it flooded the entire neighborhood. It has never been that bad, and I had no choice but to carry my puppy and abandon the house. When I went outside, it was like a river. There had been floods, but that bad. The water almost reached my chest, and the current was so strong that I almost got carried away. It didn't help, because I was carrying the puppy with my other arm. Somehow, I managed to make it about 3 blocks south, in which there was a hill. Me and my puppy were invited to stay over at a house up there. Something everyone was doing, as I wasn't the only one in trouble. When I went back to the house the next day, my brother and mother were there, and the house was ruined. Walls collapsed, furniture destroyed, and water up about 2 feet high. Luckily, no one was inside then, and I don't know of anyone that was severely injured, which is good. And luckily, the Mexican government gave every affected household a new house. It turns out that the reason the flood was that bad was because a dam broke, and it caused a sudden flow of water. That's the closest I've come to dying, and it was terrifying. But I'm just glad I was able to keep my composure the whole time. Last year I was in a head-on collision with a semi-truck. I lost my left leg, broke my neck in 3 places, 26 other bone fractures. Fast forward 1 year, 9 months in the hospital and 24 surgeries. I'm able to think and type this. Edit. Just want to say thanks for all the love. Life has sure been heck, but it's nice to have the support from so many people I don't even know. Thank you. Holy macaroni, dude. Stay strong. My parents told me that our refugee camp in Thailand was bombed by the Viet Cong. According to a Wikipedia entry, 18 civilians died from the Viet Cong raid, but the official count excludes infants that were shot and killed overnight in a hidden cave my parents were hiding in along with dozens of other families. My parents said a lot of babies were killed for crying that night because they were too loud and would alert soldiers in the act of genocide and war. For some reason, at the age of 2 months, I did not make a single sound. We were spared. This is the copy-paste entry from Wikipedia. 23 the 27th of January Dong Ruc and Son Ro camps shelled. 18 civilians were killed. 56 population of 23,000 fled to Site A. 57 link. Edit Woe. Thanks everyone. I just came to say I'm gonna watch that MASH episode you've all posted. Please always be grateful for the life you have. I'm an industrial high voltage electrician. There's been several incidents. I worked at the local power authority after graduating, and I've got to admit HV gave me the creeps, and I was never comfortable. I knew of a couple of incidents, and can't imagine a worse fate. My brother used to have a 12 gauge shotgun that he would keep loaded, and with the safety off in the corner of his room. Keeping your gun loaded and ready to go isn't an unheard of thing. But you should only be doing that when the weapon is stored in a safe or hidden compartment near your bed. So I obviously wasn't keen on him just having it propped up there. One day, my good friend came over to the house. He was never really raised around guns, so he was always intrigued by them. Well, this day, he picked it up and pointed it right at my head. He is laughing and joking around. He thought it was cool. Well, as I stand there with the barrel at my head, I got the urge to duck immediately. When I did that, I screamed, "It's loaded. It's loaded." He looked like he saw a ghost and immediately broke down. He said he was fractions of a second from pulling the trigger. He started crying and hugging me and proclaiming, I'm sorry. I had no idea." It was one of those things I laughed about in the moment because I was just 16 years old and felt invincible. It wasn't until I got older that it really started to haunt me. There's nights I lay in bed with chills thinking about how different everyone's life would have been had I not had that. Which, some real butterfly effect shit. Moral of the story is both parties were negligent in handling a firearm. My friend should have never pointed it at me, even if he knew it was unloaded. And my brother should never left a loaded firearm unattended. Don't make the same mistake. I had a friend once. He showed off his new pistol at a party and accidentally shot himself in the head and died. His head exploded. Don't play around with guns, please. I was walking on some boulders at the end of the beach before I got hit by a rogue wave and rolled down sharp barnacles for about 10 seconds. I swam back to shore safely and went to the hospital. Luckily I had no broken or fractured bones. Less than a week later 2 guys got knocked down the exact same way, and one of them ended up dying. Street parking on a busy street. I must have been about 19 or 20. I was in the backseat of my brother's 2-door car, while my mom was inside the house, to visit my grandfather and uncle. I got out, because she was taking too long. A couple minutes later, there was a loud crash out front. My brother's car was on the curb of the outdoor seating area of the restaurant next door. A drunk driver had hit my brother's car, and had it not been for his car, those people sitting there would have been badly injured. Also in that same house, my cousin lined up a row of unlit matches under my mom, and I had shared a bedroom door one night. My mother asked her to move out a day later. I never knew I was allergic to something, or even if it's allergies to begin with. One night I was sleeping, and my throat swelled up in my sleep and I stopped breathing. I woke up panicking, not knowing what was happening. I was gasping for air on the floor and somehow rushed to the bathroom. I used my fingers to open my throat from my mouth to breath. Turns out my uvula expanded to 5 times its size. This lasted for 2 hours or so. I still don't know what I ate and what I'm allergic to for that to happen. That's fucking terrifying. Deciding to tell my dad I wanted to kill myself instead of drowning myself that Friday. Well done. Brave decision, friend. Probably the time I was outside of a club in SF and decided to defend a woman who was being attacked. Was able to injure him enough for him to run away. But 5 minutes later he turned the corner with a gun pointed at us. I was sloshed and had no idea but the woman I defended grabbed my arm and pulled me inside the club and slammed the door shut. We stayed long enough for the cops to come. Only street fight I've ever been in. And only one I'll ever be in. Even if you win, it's just not worth it. I ended up breaking my hand punched with bad form, and the woman who was attacked had an injured neck for months. But we are alive. Is she your wife now? I'm currently in the possession of a very large thyroid cyst that is within a year or two of destroying everything in my throat. I'm meeting with a surgeon to discuss the results of a CT scan in 2 weeks so we can schedule a surgery date. Prior to this, about a dozen years ago, I was taking my wife and a friend up to a small town for a week-long medieval reenactment group. Took a corner very quickly on the highway and nearly crashed headlong into another truck and flew off a 50-foot cliff all at once. Me and my buddy were like 22. We decided after work to drive about 400 km to reach the sea after 14 shifts. We fall asleep 2 times during drive. We survived and never again drove being so tired. Never again. I was working for a farming contractor once and started a new shift after having worked 20 hours a day before and had like 2 hours of sleep. Ended up falling asleep on the tractor going down the road at full speed like 30 mph or something and ended up rolling the thing. It rolled over the cab once, but lucky for me stopped before it could roll over a second time. The cab wouldn't have survived a second rollover and I'm sure I would have been crushed. I'll never operate any vehicle when I'm that tired ever again. When I was around 8 or so, I was walking home from school alone. I was about a couple of houses away. A truck suddenly pulled off the road in front of me. I was walking on the side of the road towards oncoming traffic, so this person had to cross the lane of traffic to do so. The door opened and paused. All I saw was an arm with a glove on. Fight or flight kicked in, and I immediately yelled, "Hi mom," and started to wave. Now I was a latchkey kid. There was no way my mom was home. As I walked past, I started to then run in a dead sprint. I was about 2 houses away. The door suddenly shut. The truck then sped off. To this day, had I not yelled, I know I would have been on a milk carton or some pedo psychopath's toy. Damn smart move, little you. That's fucking terrifying. An old friend told me of a time she was with this older neighbor and got what she called a ping. Like suddenly it became clear this person was going to murder her, and she got out. I almost jumped off the balcony of my cruise ship room. I have a lot of issues with my mom. She's always made it very obviously that she enjoyed being around my friends more than me. The entire cruise my mom and friend hung out the entire time without me. What did it for me was I woke up and they came back and were like, "Oh, we just went to breakfast, didn't think you'd want to come. Didn't want to wait for you to get ready either, so we just went without you." I was just so overboard with emotions and so upset. I was 16 at the time. It was nighttime I think, and I remember crying and threw my legs over the balcony, and though you know what, I guarantee if I were to do this, she wouldn't even shed a tear, which she has told me before that if I were to die she wouldn't go to my funeral. I was ready to jump, but then I thought if I didn't die on impact, I'd be floating in the water for days before I died of exposure, and that sounds hot ducking awful. So I threw my legs back over and cried in bed. When my mom came back into the room she called me a dramatic bitch. Didn't ask why I was crying. Didn't tell her what I had almost done. I've never told anyone this before. Pneumonia when I was 3. First trip to Disney World, climbing under a stop train. Go under with my bike and was moving to other side to cross, and the train started moving. Severe depression. Threw myself face first off a 2-story balcony ledge thing and landed in street. Somehow only shattered some teeth. After taking a bunch of random pills I instantly regretted it. I even hung myself that same night, but I ended up not finishing it. After a while of trying to regain consciousness, I started throwing up and I couldn't breathe because of the vomiting, and I couldn't hold down food or water for days. I hated every second of it, and I'm happy that I'm still here, even though the thought of ending it all is still there. I did something very similar. I took hella Benadryl, fell asleep, and woke up to pink ass vomit however long later. First thing I remember thinking was how thankful I was that it didn't work. Very happy to say I'm now glad to be here. Heading home by myself from a softball game late one night. Light turns green for me to go, and I hear a voice that said wait. I freeze because it freaked me out, and next thing I know, a dump truck blows through the red light and is getting chased by cops. Wold hit me on the driver's side and may have killed me with how fast he was going. Adoptive father held me underwater until I stopped breathing. Finally got away from him after faking being dead. Gasped for breath over and over it. Weirdly grabbing at the air with my hands, a reflex I guess, unable to breath. Suddenly started again. He just smirked. Adoptive mother made at least 2 attempts. She nearly succeeded when I was 8. That was a drowning attempt. At 11 she taught me how to commit suicide in numerous ways. Offered to help. Said they'd keep up the beatings until I did it. They'd told family and friends they were so concerned about me being suicidal. Ran away at 15. When I was young my family went snorkeling. I got bored and got back into the little boat we came out on. Well, the anchor got untied somehow and I ended up drifting away. I tried to start the engine, but must have flooded it in my panic. The boat was getting very close to this sharp rocky outcrop, and if it had hit it, I would have died. Luckily they noticed in time and brought the sailboat close enough to pull me in. I drove through a school shooting without realizing it. Gunshots are normal around here, so I didn't really think much of it, except I should probably leave. I was at a stoplight and I hear gunshots coming from a couple cars behind me. So I go around the car in front of me and the people running in the street and drive off. Next day I hear about the shooting and that people died and the description of the vehicle. I look at the video on the news and there I'm a couple cars ahead. They were shooting right past me. Bad aim is all it would have taken.